Hello there, and welcome to this quiet voyage of sleepy science. I'm grateful that in the middle of your busy life, you found a moment to pause here, to lean back, breathe softly, and listen to the universe, as though it were a lullaby written across the heavens. Imagine the air around you loosening, the weight of the day dissolving, your shoulders easing downward, while your breath settles into its natural rhythm. And as this happens, above you stretches the vast dome of night, filled with lights so plentiful that even words stumble to measure them, lights that have traveled millions of years simply to touch your eyes tonight. Look upward in your imagination now. Picture the night not as a sheet of blackness, but as a living ocean of stars, each grain shining like the reflection of a tiny diamond drifting in infinite water. People often say there are more stars in the universe than sand grains on all the beaches of the earth, but even this comparison fails, for every new telescope has extended the count further, showing galaxies by the tens of billions scattered outward, revealing that what seems to the naked eye as a dark space between stars is itself crowded with entire galaxies, entire islands of suns and planets, whole swirls of cosmic history. What you see is a fraction, only the faint surface of a layered infinity. The Milky Way itself, that pale river arching from horizon to horizon, is comprised of nearly 400 billion stars, yet it is only one galaxy among perhaps 2 trillion others, shimmering through space like droplets spilled on velvet, beyond the reach of personal counting, but not beyond the capacity of wonder. As you imagine this river of light, picture the streak of a meteor cutting across it, burning for only seconds against the quiet vastness. Meteors, those whispered visitors, are no larger than grains of sand or pebbles adrift in space, remnants of comets, fragments of debris that, when caught in Earth's atmosphere, ignite into brilliant streaks called shooting stars. Their brief lives burn away at heights of 60 to 70 miles above the ground. Yet across centuries, people have seen them and made wishes, attached hopes and stories to them, as though the fragile light of a dissolving pebble could carry the weight of entire human hearts. Sometimes, dozens arrive together in meteor showers, streams of particulate dust left behind by icy comets returning on their long cycles. And as Earth moves through those streams once every year, we inherit a rain of sparks, the sky singing briefly, like it remembers its childhood, when the solar system was still young. Imagine yourself lying back in grass, watching hundreds of sparks burning away, each a reminder that space is never still, that tiny fragments wander endlessly until gravity and atmosphere let them fall. Now let your gaze drift back wider. Let it spread again to the Milky Way, the soft band of silvery light, so familiar that ancient civilizations gave it names long before they understood its truth. Some saw it as a spilled path of grain or milk across the heavens, others as a bridge where gods once walked. But in its reality, it is an edge-on view of our own galaxy's disk. When you look upward at that hazy stripe, you are gazing into the heart of the spiral, thousands upon thousands of light years deep, filled with star clouds, clusters, and nebulae. Your eyes cannot separate them, so the countless pinpoints blur into a mist, and in that mist you are reading history of immense distance. Somewhere far out beyond the edges lie galactic neighbors, dwarf galaxies tethered to our spiral by gravity's invisible leash. And all of this whole system, the spiral, the clusters, even the faint dwarf companions, is only one node among infinite filaments of the cosmic web, stretching outward like threads of gossamer spun by time. Take another breath. Now, feel your chest rise and fall. With your breath, imagine the stars breathing too, an inhale and an exhale delivered not in seconds, but in millions of years. When you breathe deeply here on Earth, you join the rhythm of the universe, for the very atoms in your lungs once came from the explosions of ancient stars. The oxygen filling you this moment was forged in fusional fires billions of years ago, and only by cycles of burning and dispersal, collapsing and reforming, did it arrive inside you, gentle as air. You are already woven into the story of those 400 billion suns of the Milky Way, already resonating with the quiet tapestry of lights above. Now let us turn to the closest companion in our night sky, the moon, that silent sentinel whose face has watched every generation of humankind. Unlike the stars that twinkle from billions of miles, the moon is nearby, a rocky world only about 240,000 miles away, circling Earth once every 27 days, yet always presenting the same familiar side. This is because it is tidally locked. Its rotation on its own axis takes the same time as its orbit around Earth, so what we witness is one unchanging hemisphere. That is why children can learn to recognize the features of the lunar face. The darker plains called Maria, formed by ancient lava flows, and the lighter highlands pocked with craters from countless impacts. They look unchanged across lifetimes, like an eternal portrait pinned to the sky. The moon, however, is far more than a picture hung in nighttime air. It reaches down invisibly to the seas, pulling entire oceans outward and inward through the force of its gravity, shaping tides that modulate ecosystems and rhythms of life. Twice each day, coastlines move to its slow heartbeat, waters inching back or surging forward, a planetary pulse dependent on a satellite suspended in darkness. Even your body shares this connection, for the cycles of life have been synchronized to lunar pull since ancient times, farmers timing crops by full moons, poets timing metaphors by its glow. The moon is less than 1/3 the size of Earth, yet its presence silences chaos, stabilizing the axis of Earth's rotation, cradling us against extreme turbulence. Without the moon, the length of our days would shift unpredictably, our climate more unstable, our nights empty of silver watchfulness. Imagine Earth circling the sun without a steady companion, its tilt wobbling like a restless spinning top, an uncertain planet unable to sustain the familiar patterns that gave rise to life as we know it. As you imagine the pale circle rising over ocean or forest, think about how phases are born. The moon does not generate light of its own, but shines by reflecting the rays of the sun. Each night, we see a different fraction illuminated, depending on the geometry. New moon, when it lies near the sun, crescent as it emerges into evening, half when Earth, moon, and sun form a right angle, full when Earth stands between sun and moon with lunar face fully exposed. This cycle repeats every 29.5 days, giving humanity one of its earliest clocks, a rhythm more ancient than printed calendars. Even words like month come from moon, embedding celestial rhythm into language itself. Occasionally, setup produces spectacle. A supermoon, when a full moon coincides with the point in its orbit closest to Earth, swelling larger and brighter than usual. Or a blue moon, when 2 full moons rise within a single calendar month, rare enough to birth the phrase, once in a blue moon. Each of these occurrences reminds us that even what is constant changes, that surprises still dwell in familiar skies. What appears steady is in fact a celestial dance, the moon slowly receding from Earth at nearly 1.5 inches per year, meaning that once it stood closer, appearing larger above primordial oceans, and one day far in the future eclipses will end, for the moon will appear too small to cover the sun. So the moon is not silent at all. It is a voice of gravity humming, of time moving, of cycles recurring. It whispers the deep truth. that our lives are shaped by relationships to cosmic bodies we rarely think about. Every rising tide, every gentle glow across trees and rooftops in a sleepy town is a verse in a poem written between Earth and a companion rock drifting through space. When you breathe tonight, you breathe beneath starfields wider than imagination and beneath a moon that has been locking eyes with Earth for billions of years. You belong to this pattern. You are small within it, but you are not excluded, because the stars and meteors and galaxies above, as well as the familiar face of the moon, are not simply scenery for your life. They are the long currents of which your life is one brief wave, and in their constancy lies your comfort. When you raise your eyes into a clear night, beyond the single glow of the moon and the misty arc of the Milky Way, you will begin to notice patterns tucked among the stars, shapes that have guided myth, migration, and memory for countless generations. And these patterns, though not physically related in the three-dimensional sprawl of the galaxy, form constellations, illusions painted onto the dark canvas, groups of stars that only appear connected because of the vantage point from Earth. Consider the alignment of 7 bright stars that together form the Big Dipper, an asterism recognized almost universally across northern cultures, yet in actuality, its members lie at wildly different distances, from about 60 light-years to over 120 light-years away, meaning that what the eye joins into a dipper is not a physical object, but a trick of perspective. As if you were looking down a forest path, where nearby trees and distant trunks align into a pictorial symbol, and yet despite the illusion, this simple design has pointed travelers north for centuries, the line inferred through its handle directing eyes toward Polaris, the pole star, giving humans reassurance in their wanderings. Hunters and navigators in ancient Greece saw the form of Orion standing tall across the sky, the belt of 3 stars glittering in a neat row, but those luminous points are scattered over distances that range from fewer than 1,000 light-years to almost 2,000, impossible to imagine in local terms, yet to human perspective perfectly aligned, and through this neat line entire epics were told. Orion the hunter with his bow drawn. Farther south, under skies that never grace northern latitudes, cultures describe the Southern Cross, its 4 points bright enough to command attention in Australia, New Zealand, and South America, a pattern invisible to much of the northern world, but for millennia, orienting seafarers as surely as Polaris does in the north. Constellations, then, are as much cultural maps as astronomical ones, and though the International Astronomical Union formally recognizes 88 of them across the sphere, stretching from Cassiopeia's angular throne to Scorpius clinging near the Milky Way, it is the ancient patterns layered on by story, myth, and memory that linger in our minds, for names like Leo, Virgo, or Sagittarius are more than positions of stars swept along the sun's apparent path. They are echoes of ancient astronomer, priests, watching where the sun, moon, and planets wandered through a wide celestial belt we still call the zodiac. It is humbling to remember that what we take as fixed formations are moving slowly across epochs, proper motion, carrying stars gently apart, or across the background, so that thousands of years from now, Orion's belt will not be aligned, and the Dipper will splay, gradually altering patterns familiar to us today, yet to the human eye within the span of a lifetime. They look eternally fixed, eternal enough to inspire folklore and seasonal rituals, eternal enough still to shape the calendar. Constellations served ancient farmers as clocks, for the heliacal rising of certain star groups announced planting or harvesting seasons. For example, the rising of Sirius just before dawn in Egypt signaled the flooding of the Nile. Across the Pacific, Polynesian navigators memorized not just one or two, but hundreds of constellational positions relative to ocean swells, islands, and horizon points, steering by a living star compass, more complex than any mechanical device, linking daily survival to stars drifting overhead. And yet the irony is elegant. While humans anchored their lives to constellations, the stars themselves are neither bound to each other, nor bound to the stories we told. They are nuclear furnaces scattered across vast space. Some giants bound to burn out in violent supernovae, others quiet dwarfs set to linger trillions of years. And we happen to stand in a narrow time window where their alignment tells us stories. As you imagine the midnight sky above, realize that each point blazing against the dark is at a different stage of life, and our minds gather them into shapes: animals, gods, compasses, lovers, not because they belong together, but because we do. The constellations are not uniform across the globe. If you travel tonight from the far north to the deep south of Earth, the tapestry would shift dramatically, and the familiar dipper would sink beneath the horizon, while new configurations climb high into visibility. Those living near the equator are lucky enough to sample both halves, catching glimpses of Orion straddling hemispheres. But others know entirely different night skies depending on latitude. And far across seasons, as Earth orbits the sun, different constellations rise and fade with the months. Northern winters favor Orion and Taurus. Summers reveal Scorpius and Sagittarius, blazing where the Milky Way bulges. Autumn gives way to Andromeda. Spring rises with Virgo. This slow wheel reminds us that constellations are not only a map of space, but of time, of seasons pulsing endlessly in a pattern clocked by stars. So when you breathe under Orion's belt or the dipping handle of the Big Dipper, you are not only gazing outward into space, you are measuring moments of Earth's orbit, carried on an invisible carousel circling the sun. Imagine now how across thousands of years, humans far apart yet united by sky looked up, traced the same patterns, whispered myths to children, and in doing so left a record not in stone but in starlight, one that remains every time you tilt your head into the darkness. And while the constellations offer patterns for imagination, Earth itself performs its own luminous play. High above polar regions where threads of green, purple, and red unfurl across horizons like veils stirred by an invisible dancer. These auroras are not legends alone, but real manifestations of particles streaming from the surface of the sun. A ceaseless outward breath called the solar wind, consisting mostly of electrons and protons hurled at millions of miles per hour, whipping past planets, scattering magnetic fields, pushing through space. When this stream collides with Earth, it meets our planet's magnetosphere, a protective bubble shaped by the iron heart churning far beneath our feet. And instead of allowing solar particles to strike us directly, those lines of force guide them poleward to the high atmosphere where they excite molecules of oxygen and nitrogen, releasing light as shimmering color. Thus the auroras form, not random but sculpted by invisible physics, electrons spiraling along magnetic lines into the upper atmosphere, colliding at altitudes of 60 to 200 miles, producing curtains and waves that ripple like living silk. Oxygen atoms release green and red glows depending on altitude. Nitrogen molecules emit purple and blue hues. Together they weave the hypnotic ribbons that bend, twist, and occasionally explode into coronas arching across the entire sky. From the ground, the aurora looks ghostly and alive, and though silent to our ears, it is music in electromagnetic frequencies, a resonance as if the planet's shield itself were singing back at the sun. For centuries, people told stories of spirits dancing, fire burning, or battles across the heavens, but science reveals instead a relationship more intimate. Earth constantly shielding its seas and forests from solar fury, converting danger into art. The solar wind fluctuates with the sun's cycles, increasing during years of high sunspot activity, swelling storms that can ignite auroras so bright they are seen far beyond polar circles, as low as Europe, China, or the United States in historic events. The Great Geomagnetic Storm of 1859, called the Carrington Event, illuminated skies with auroras even near the equator, and today such a storm would disrupt power grids, satellites, and communication systems. But to the eye of a sleepless dreamer, it would be only waves of emerald fire pouring across the horizon, a signal of cosmic connection between our star and our sphere. Earth's magnetic field is in itself a kind of guardian miracle. Generated by dynamo action within molten iron currents in the outer core, it reaches far into space, stretching to form a tail opposite the sun, constantly deflecting and containing charged solar particles. Without it, our atmosphere would erode quickly under solar radiation, as Mars's has, stripped over billions of years until only a tenuous shell remained. But with it, Earth maintains sea and soil, a biosphere stable enough for consciousness to develop and for you to sit here listening. Remember, when you see the aurora shimmering in photographs or rare visits southward, it is a visible reminder that the cosmos is never silent, that our star does not merely shine, but breathes streams of particles, that our planet embraces those streams with invisible arms, and that the consequence of this dance is beauty that strikes awe into both ancient tribes and modern astronauts. The aurora does not stand still. It arcs in bands, writhes, collapses into pulsating ovals, sometimes stretches into beams, shooting upward like green searchlights. Pilots flying night routes across polar regions glimpse them flowing beside wings. Astronauts orbiting in the International Space Station witness them from above, curtains glowing along curved horizons, shimmering coronas wrapping Earth's limb. In these views, you realize the aurora is far larger than any city, stretching across continents, enveloping atmosphere in a glow that dwarfs human scale. Its variations of color, frequency, and brightness depend on where and when the solar wind breaches the magnetosphere, so each display is unique, a signature between sun and earth, never repeated exactly. Even now, while you breathe gently in your room, somewhere above the high latitudes of our planet, curtains are stirring, green light draping across ice and wilderness, glowing against snow, reminding any wandering soul or solitary watcher that the universe is alive with interactions invisible most of the time, only occasionally revealed as luminous dance. The thinness of the upper atmosphere makes these collisions faint to the eye, yet combined they paint entire arcs visible for thousands of miles. Cameras reveal colors and details hidden beyond human vision, and yet our simple eyes seeing the glow are enough to trigger awe deeper than words, shimmering signs that we are wrapped in a magnetic cocoon, safe within space, delicate yet strong. And this spectacle touches not only Earth, for auroras blaze on Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus as well, each world harnessing its magnetic shield to create glowing crowns, different in scale and structure, but always echoing the same basic principle: solar wind meeting planetary field, energy transmuted into beauty. We are part of a family of planets, each singing back to the sun with lights at their poles. So as we pass from constellations, human imagination, pinned to random star alignments, to auroras, Earth's own play of solar particles turned radiant, we see again a pattern: humanity making meaning of what shines above, nature generating art from physics, cosmos writing stories in light, and whether traced as Orion on a winter night, or glowing green curtains rushing across Arctic sky, the heavens speak in structure and in dance. Picture, if you can, a shard of ice and dust wandering for billions of years through the deep silence of space, a nucleus darker than coal, frozen harder than any winter you have felt, spanning only a few kilometers across, yet holding within it memories of the solar system's birth. And when such an object, called a comet, falls inward from its vast orbit toward the warming light of the sun, it awakens, driven by heat, gases locked within. For 4.5 billion years, sublimate, jets of vapor erupt like tiny geysers, and the drifting dark rock blossoms into a luminous traveler, trailing a radiant veil across the canopy of night. What was invisible in the far reaches of the Oort cloud becomes suddenly spectacular, a head glowing with gas and dust, a tail unspooling across millions of kilometers, and this tail is always swept away from the sun, not because the comet itself chooses direction, but because streams of sunlight and solar wind push outward, carrying dust and ions like invisible fingers, combing through hair, sculpting one tail of pale dust that curves gently, and another tail of charged plasma that extends straight, a twin banner blown across interplanetary empty space. Every comet that journeys near the sun is announcing its own slow cycle, its long elliptical track taking hundreds, thousands, sometimes even millions of years before it returns. Yet one particular visitor has become a household name: Halley's Comet, circling with a period of about 76 years, visible perhaps once in a lifetime, bright enough in ancient returns to inspire awe and dread. Records stretch back across cultures. Chinese astronomers carefully plotted its passages, noting the year 240 BCE. Medieval Europeans recoiled when its hairy star glowed overhead in 1066, recorded in the Bayeux tapestry, like a celestial omen foretelling the conquest of England. And again in 1910, when modern crowds gathered, some fearful of poisonous comet tails, some jubilant to glimpse history in the sky. It is the same object, circling endlessly, a frozen remnant of formation that orbits the sun long after kingdoms rise and fall, returning faithfully to remind each new generation they are part of a longer story, one written not in centuries, but in cosmic loops carved into blackness. To witness a comet passing is to realize that survival itself has a continuity measured on scales larger than human lives. Ancient people feared them, calling them harbingers of war and plague, for they were unpredictable against the background of steady constellations. Unlike stars that remained fixed, unlike planets that wandered predictably, a comet appeared without warning, trailing fire, its path changing night by night, reminding fragile societies that the sky held powers beyond their control. Yet with fear came beauty, sketches carved into bones, scrolls and chronicles showing tails blazing, a reminder that from the edge of the solar system, a messenger arrives, offering both terror and wonder. Today we no longer fear poisoning gases. We know the tail is thin, millions of times less dense than smoke, unable to harm, yet still the vision remains awe-inducing, because it connects us directly with the primeval disk of dust that spun into planets, moons, and Earth itself. These nuclei in their darkness preserve original ingredients, the ices of water, carbon dioxide, methane, ammonia, layered with dust grains, and by sampling them with spacecraft like Rosetta at Comet 67P, scientists touch the earliest chapter of our system, discovering organic compounds and amino acid precursors that may have seeded early Earth, linking life itself back to these wandering snowballs of time. Imagine yourself leaning back tonight beneath stars, and across that still field of darkness, a comet appears, faint at first, then shockingly long, its tail sweeping across entire constellations. bridging celestial imaginations. You remember in that instant that time is layered. Earlier centuries watched the same object, and centuries ahead will watch again. And in between, you are one link in a chain of gazing. That faint, dusty core, its jets whispering sublimated gas, is writing a letter in light to generations unborn. When you allow this realization to settle, you understand that comets are not alien intruders, but recurring visitors, carriers of continuity, and every luminous sweep of their tails is a passageway across eras, drawing the attention of villagers by firelight, kings in courts, astronomers with telescopes, wanderers like yourself, all held in a chain of awe. While planets hurry silently in clockwork orbits defined by years, comets pace themselves across centuries, reminding us that time and space is patient and that the universe waits longer than any human breath before completing its sentences. And since the tail always streams away from the sun, by looking at it, you glimpse invisible radiation and plasma carried outward through the entire solar system. That tail is a flag showing where energy flows, where particles are being driven, so each comet is also a marker of how the sun breathes. Comets remind us that our star, though it glows steadily to our eyes, is constantly exhaling, and that exhalation stretches millions of miles beyond, sculpting luminous travelers. In your mind, picture this paradox: the coldest black rock ignited into vision only by heat from the sun, the smallest fragile ice remnant creating a spectacle across the heaven of billions, the feared visitor of history turning into the romantic anchor of modern stargazers, the symbol of cosmic continuity bridging living and dead. Now let the comet's faint glow fade in your mind, and with that fading, open your awareness wider. Imagine the curtain lifting to reveal not a single visitor crossing, but your actual home, the enormity of the galaxy itself. The Milky Way spans before you, not as a flat band, but as a grand spiral of light. Hundreds of billions of stars, linked in loosely wound arms, coiling gracefully around a dark center. And when you glimpse that pale river flowing overhead from horizon to horizon, you are in fact gazing through the dense star fields of one arm seen edge on. From our position tucked within the Orion Arm, a minor spiral spur about 2/3 of the way out from the galactic center, we cannot step away to view the beautiful swirl as an entire structure. Yet radio telescopes, infrared images, and mapping of stellar motions confirm what your imagination can already see: that we live inside a great pinwheel, a cosmic whirlpool of matter rotating quietly, each star a bead of fire pirouetting around the hidden gravitational well of a central black hole. In this delicate position, we orbit the galactic heart once every 225 to 250 million years. So since the age of the dinosaurs, Earth has only completed a little more than one such circuit, a single galactic year. And in that interval, galaxies themselves collided and merged. Yet our fragile ecosystem rose, carried along on this majestic carousel. If you could see the invisible path, you would notice the sun dragging its planets with it, spiraling gently up and down relative to the galactic plane, threading through waves of gas and clusters, circling with all the stars together. And though we perceive the nights as quiet, in cosmic perspective, our solar system streaks through space at more than 500,000 miles per hour. Yet space is so vast that even at such speed, we appear suspended, barely moving, like a leaf in a slow current, floating down a river too wide to see its banks. That is why the Milky Way overhead glows like a cloud, glowing so faintly uniform that ancient myths named it the path of birds, or the river of night, or a trail of spilled milk from divine chalices. But now you understand, it is the combined light of stars far too many to resolve. This galaxy, nurtures not just stars, but nebulae where new suns ignite, and clusters where families of stars are born together like siblings. And at the outer edges, satellite galaxies orbit us, the large and small Magellanic clouds, visible from southern hemisphere skies, ragged companions, like fragments trailing beside a queen, drawn inward by gravity, together with the Milky Way and the Andromeda Galaxy. These satellites form part of the local group, more than 50 galaxies, linked by mutual pull, drifting together through a subtler thread of supercluster. Thus your home is not only Earth, not only the solar system, not only the Milky Way, but also the tapestry of groups and clusters spanning outward nearly without end. When your ancestors gazed up seeing the Milky Way, they did not know its true nature. Aristotle thought it atmospheric. Galileo revealed with a telescope in 1610 that it resolves into countless stars. William Herschel later mapped it, placing us in a flattened disk, and now spacecraft measure parallax of distant stars, charting arms like Perseus and Sagittarius, determining we are not central in grandeur, but peripheral, living in a quiet neighborhood. And is that not humbling? That our planetary cradle lies in no privileged place, but tucked into an offshoot, within a spiral arm not too dense, not too quiet, a galactic suburb far enough from the raging core's supernovae to preserve stability, near enough to gaze at richness. Our location is modest, yet precisely because of this modesty our fragile origins flourished. It is the cosmic equivalent of living in a small town, dotting the edge of a vast metropolis, where you may wander under rivers of light, knowing the beating heart of the city thrums far away, yet your sky is calm enough to survive, to breathe, to grow crops, to write stories. The Milky Way is more than the arc across sky. It is the system that gave you every atom in your body. It is the swirl of hydrogen that collapsed into suns, fused, exploded, and recycled until carbon, oxygen, iron layered into dust, drifted into disks, shaped planets, and eventually shaped you. When you look upward at that pale road, it is not simply light scattering across air, but a biological family portrait, a history etched into photons, telling you you are of us. You stare at the brightness of billions of suns aggregated, and what blinks back at you is ancestry, reminder, continuity. While you sleep, the galaxy continues its rotation. Clusters orbit, arms sweep forward, tides of dark matter flex and bend. Black holes feast quietly, and all of it is happening far beyond, yet includes you within. In this single vision, the moving tails of comets tracing centuries of cycles, and the stationary arc of the Milky Way, glowing as though unchanged for eternity. You are learning the same truth, painted two ways. The cosmos carries memory. Fleeting objects appear and vanish, periodic and transient, yet always returning. Grand structures shine, seemingly still, yet move across millions of years. Both comets and galaxies are chapters of one story, time written on scales larger than humanity, but visible to any upward gaze. So you keep looking, and as you inhale and exhale, gently, you understand that each breath is a comet's long orbit sped up, each beat of the heart a star's life compressed, and the arc above you is your own home sprawling beyond comprehension, a river of starlight folding you into its embrace. There is one star that seems to resist the restless motion of the heavens, one point of light so still against the nightly swirl that sailors, shepherds, wanderers, and dreamers for thousands of years believed it to be anchored to the very axis of creation. And this star is Polaris, the North Star, resting almost exactly along Earth's axis of rotation in the northern sky. So while every other star drifts in long, slow arcs around the celestial pole, this one appears unmoving, steadfast, a celestial nail pinning the vast canopy into place. Watch a time-lapse of night sky photography, and you will see whirls of arcs around a dark center, bursts of motion, stretched into luminous circles, and in that void at the center glimmers, constant, unblinking, not because it refuses to move, but because we happen to be aligned, our planet's axis tilting directly toward it, and so its relative motion seems erased. To ancient observers, it was a miracle to see such stillness in the restless ocean of stars. In times before compasses and GPS, in times when survival depended on finding reliable bearings across deserts and seas, Polaris stood as the ever-present guide, from Phoenician sailors steering across the Mediterranean, to Vikings driving their longships westward, to caravans trekking beneath wide steppe horizons. All could trust that if they fixed their gaze upon that star, they would know where north rested. Its presence shrank the immensity of wandering. It was assurance against becoming lost in pathless regions, and so Polaris became more than a star. It was a compass rose etched into sky. Yet as steady as it appears, Polaris is not singular when viewed with science's measure. It is a multiple star system, a supergiant, nearly 2,500 times more luminous than our Sun, accompanied by smaller companions, its light traveling over 4 centuries before it touches us. So when you look, you receive ancient rays from a star that itself has transformed in those intervening years. Long before those rays began their journey, ships had not yet been built, languages had not yet been invented, and yet the light waited, journeyed, and finally fell into your pupils this evening. Remember also that Polaris will not always be our North Star, for Earth's axis wobbles in a slow procession over a cycle of about 26,000 years, a gyroscope tilt that changes the sky's alignment, so that in ancient Egypt, it was not Polaris, but Thebain and Draco that held the title, and in millennia to come, Vega and Lyra will take the mantle, shining as the guiding mark. To you, Polaris is fixed, but in spans of time larger than civilizations, its crown passes hand to hand among stars. In the southern hemisphere, travelers never find such a steadfast lamp overhead, for the Earth's spin points away from any bright star, and so navigators there learned instead to trust the Southern Cross, a compact diamond of 4 stars that arcs high above Austral lands, and by drawing long imaginary extensions from its spine, sailors could locate the South Celestial Pole, less directly fixed than Polaris, but still a vital orientation, a geometric compass built into heavens. Civilizations across continents devised methods suited to their skies. Some used Canopus low on the horizon, others measured the tilt of the Southern Cross, all transforming stars into instruments of survival, proof that humanity's relationship with heaven was always both aesthetic and practical, both a source of myth and a map of direction. Look closely at the night across the months, and you will understand how our orbit around the sun shifts the stage. Constellations are seasonal, a celestial calendar written without ink, telling farmers and wanderers exactly when equinox or solstice approached. Orion commands the sky in winter, his belt sharp against frozen air. Scorpius curves through humid summer nights. In autumn, Pegasus spreads wings across crisp skies. Springtime reveals Virgo gently ascending. The cyclic rising and setting allowed ancient cultures to plant crops with precision, gave reason to festivals at particular times of year, demonstrated that time itself could be measured by the shifting backdrop. The stars therefore became both the diary and the clock, keeping time for civilizations still uncertain of the count of days. And it is beautiful to imagine Each time you step into evening air, your face tilted upward, you are also turning pages of an endless calendar, each constellation guiding your position, not only in space, but also in time, embedding you in a wheel larger than hours or minutes. The stars you see tonight will slip behind the horizon to be replaced by others, and across the length of a year the entire heavens cycle, as though someone turned a globe slowly in front of your eyes, revealing pattern after pattern, one after another. Stillness and motion coexist above you. Polaris appears frozen. The Southern Cross wheels its geometry southward. Constellations drift with seasons. All stars slide gradually across the frame of centuries. And so the sky is both anchor and river, compass and clock. You can stand where ancestors stood, align your steps by the same points, plant your fields by the same seasonal risings, and yet know at the same time you are also seeing them differently, in shifted forms, with added understanding. You are embedded within constancy through change, an eternal flow of stillness, a compass of light. Shift your gaze now from the stillness of Polaris and the wheel of constellations to the overwhelming beacon that rules the day, a star far nearer than any of those glimmering points, an ordinary star by cosmic measure, but to you the source of every pulse of warmth, every breath of air, every leaf that glimmers green in sunlight. The sun is not merely a golden circle rising and setting. It is a seething sphere of nuclear fusion, 100 times wider than Earth, glowing with energy released as hydrogen nuclei fuse into helium in its dense core. Temperatures exceeding 15 million degrees Celsius, pressure crushing atoms together until proton becomes bound to proton, and each fusion releases bursts of energy that travel outward, bouncing photon to photon over tens of thousands of years through dense solar plasma, until finally emerging at the surface and streaming across 93 million miles of space to touch your skin and illuminate your day. Every ray you feel warming your cheek may have been trapped within the sun's interior for eons, delayed in its random walk outward, only to arrive now, a light older than human civilizations, settling tenderly upon you this morning. The heat radiating from this fusion drives climate, oceans, and atmosphere on Earth, and the balance of that energy within delicate ranges allows liquid water to persist, ecosystems to bloom, life chemistry to run uninterrupted. A slight shift closer, and oceans would boil away, move farther, and seas would freeze into silence. But placed where we are within the zone of habitability, the sun maintains a steady supply, a heartbeat of photons that has persisted for 4.6 billion years, and will persist for billions more. It is steady, reliable, overwhelmingly powerful, and yet fragile to our needs. As every green blade of grass, every breath you take from oxygen, created by photosynthesis, every bone in your body, nourished by plants and animals that depend on sunlight, owes its continued existence to that constant nuclear rhythm. Think of the paradox. You live because of storms of plasma beyond comprehension, microluminescence, born of fusion reactions that cannot be replicated on Earth for more than fleeting instants. And yet for the sun, such reactions are effortless, billions upon billions of them every second, enough to light a solar system. Look closer though, and the surface of the sun tells its own restless story. Dark blemishes called sunspots drift across its face, loops of intense magnetic field piercing upward out of plasma, disturbances where hotter material is suppressed, cooler relative to surrounding brilliance, still blazing thousands of degrees, yet darkened to our sight. They come and fade in cycles of about 11 years, waxing into abundance and then declining, marking the sun's own rhythm beyond daily rise and set. With sunspots come flares, sudden eruptions releasing energy equivalent to billions of atomic bombs in minutes, floods of radiation rushing through space. Coronal mass ejections hurl entire clouds of charged particles outwards at millions of miles per hour, racing beyond planets and crossing the realm of satellites and spacecraft. Imagine such plasma encountering Earth. Our magnetic field bends them, shields us, channels them away, yet in overwhelming storms they compress magnetic boundaries, induce currents in power grids, shake navigation systems, endanger astronauts, and still, when translated into visible light, they appear as auroras, those same dancing veils in polar skies, shimmering rewards for a cosmic hazard warded off. Then there is the mystery of the corona. The sun's outer atmosphere, visible only in total eclipses, glowing tendrils stretching millions of kilometers outward, paradoxically hotter than the sun's surface itself, a puzzle where plasma interacts with tangled magnetism to raise energies to millions of degrees, streaming continuously away in solar wind, a gale of charged particles rushing into interplanetary space. This wind sculpts tails of comets, shapes the heliosphere around our solar system, nearly 100 astronomical units away, places a bubble around us, where solar influence meets interstellar medium. Without it, we would drift more naked through galactic space. With it, we are cocooned, even as it blasts us. It is delicate protection, matched with delicate threat, the condition within which life has stabilized. Each breath you take during daylight is powered by this. Each wave of ocean tide glitters because of this. Each heartbeat resonates with rhythms set by a star that never rests and never forgives. And yet, for all this violence and flux, to your eyes rising in dawn or setting into horizon at dusk, the sun is magnificent simplicity, a golden sphere washing Earth with warmth. Humanity deifies it, paints with it, writes poems in its honor. You eat because of it, you see because of it, and in one ultimate truth, you exist because of it. Consider, too, the inevitable path ahead. The sun is midlife, nearly 4.6 billion years old, with roughly 5 billion years remaining before it leaves its main sequence, expanding into a red giant that will engulf Mercury and Venus and perhaps Earth. But until then, its steady fuse continues, constant for longer than humanity will exist. You live in a moment of perfect balance, a narrow window of stability where warmth sustains without destroying. And while you sleep tonight, the sun's core beats with fusion, output unaffected by your breathing or your thought, continuing its infinite gift. The sun is a star, not unique among the billions across the Milky Way, yet to you it is the only source, the central hearth. You may marvel at constellations, at Polaris, at the Southern Cross, but each is distant, cold, unreachable. Only this star directly shapes your blood, your breath, your capacity to dream. Somewhere inside you, in every cell, is energy that once came as sunlight, absorbed by plant life, embedded into food chains, converted into motion and thought. Every smile carries sunlight, every tear glimmers with energy, first released in hydrogen fusion long before humans walked upon Earth. When you look at dawn, you do not merely witness a glowing circle, you are reconnecting with the very engine that sustains you. Imagine the solar system as an immense stage set beneath an eternal dome, and within this silent theater, 9 great performers, once named by culture and myth, now counted as 8 principal planets since Pluto was placed among dwarf companions, trace their sweeping steps across the script of gravity, their movements silent to the ear, but written with precision in the fabric of mathematics. Each planet follows an ellipse, not a perfect circle, but a stretched loop, as Johannes Kepler discovered 4 centuries ago when he studied Tycho Brahe's meticulous catalogue of observations, realizing that the heavens do not move in divine circles, but in harmonies slightly imperfect, yet exquisitely repeatable. So Mercury races nearest the fire, darting around the sun in just 88 days, while Venus glows with brilliance at evening and dawn, orbiting every 225 days. Earth steady in her yearly rhythm, Mars crimson and patient, taking 687 days. Jupiter vast, taking 12 years for a single turn. Saturn wrapped in icy rings, circling in 29 years. Uranus tilted, rolling like a lazy top in 84 years. Neptune farthest among them, needing 165 years for a single journey. They move together like dancers bound to a conductor. They cannot escape the gravity of the sun pulling them into endless ballet. Each step predictable, each return guaranteed. Venus, brightest of all, gleams like a false star in twilight, so luminous it is seen even through thin clouds, and for ages was called the morning star and evening star, not one but 2 distinct lights, until astronomers understood it was a single planet, shifting its position relative to Earth and Sun. This radiant twin, nearly the same size as Earth, yet cloaked in suffocating carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid clouds, is at once mirror and warning, a jewel in the sky, but a furnace on its surface, hot enough to melt lead. Mars, faint and red, surveys the same skies, its color a reflection of iron oxide, dust of rust blanketing soil, so distinctive that great cultures named it after warriors and gods of battle. When you see its ember glow rising before midnight, you stand in a line of witnesses, stretching back to Babylonian priests, Chinese court astronomers, Roman storytellers, who named it for their god of war. To the naked eye, the red planet is a wanderer no brighter than some stars, yet binoculars show ruddy disks, telescopes reveal polar caps, robotic emissaries roll across plains, and still in quiet hours it looks merely like a spark among countless others. Saturn is more subtle, never as brilliant as Venus or Jupiter, but through a telescope, its mystery reveals itself, an orb tipped with rings more delicate than anything imagined in myth, rings made not of solid material, but of countless particles of dust, ice, rock, each circling in their own narrow bands, billions of fragments forming an illusion of solidity visible across 1 billion kilometers. It is an image of impossible grandeur, an orchestra of ice mirroring the greater orchestra of planets, all circling in patterns set long before humans learned to listen. How delicate to remember that planets are not stars. Stars burn with nuclear fire at their cores, emitting energy by fusing hydrogen into helium, producing their own light, their own warmth. Planets glow only by reflection, visible to us merely because sunlight glances off their surfaces or their clouds and rivers, bouncing photons back into our hungry eyes. To call a planet bright is to acknowledge the sun, for without its rays even Venus would vanish into obscurity. Planets are companions, children circling the parent star, dependent eternally. That dependency creates beauty, for in the night sky stars twinkle alone, light traveling for unimaginable distances, often so old that the source star has already burned away. Yet planets move quickly over weeks and months, shifting positions against stellar backdrops, drawing visible diagrams of the solar system's geometry. The word planet itself comes from a Greek root meaning wanderer, because unlike the eternal grids of stars, these bodies wandered restlessly, not fixed, alive with displacement. Wanderers, they remain still. The dance you watch over months is the ancient dance of gravitational harmonies constantly replayed, the stage of our system repeating a choreography so perfect that future eclipses, conjunctions, transits can be predicted thousands of years before arrival. Picture the solar system slowed into music. You can hear with breath. Jupiter thuth, unders low, a bass drum beating once each 12 years. Saturn follows with deeper resonance. Earth strikes steady time, one note per year. Venus adds shimmering accents, bright and brief. Mars sings softer in ember tones, and Mercury flickers like a trill racing around the melody. Together they play the hymn of elliptical law. To watch from Earth is to see this score revealed in slow motion across night after night. Bright Venus descending from evening, Mars climbing eastward, Jupiter dominant in midnight, Saturn visiting behind, each planet showing itself not as solitary but as one member in ensemble. Planets do not move arbitrarily, but with resonances, near ratios, echoing across orbits, patterns of spacing discovered by careful application of Kepler's and Newton's insight, hints of hidden design in an ocean of mathematics. Imagine them as dancers on invisible rings traced onto the stage floor of space, each step a gravitational necessity, each motion bounded yet graceful, each illuminated partner showing its face to us only when geometry allows. From horizon to horizon they leap unseen, always following the conductor's hand, a dance beyond our lifetimes, but visible in fragments whenever you look upward. Their choreography is patient, eternal, a hymn of motion so precise and old that it will still be true long after memory of names has withered. Now imagine, beyond the choreographies of completed worlds, the birthplace of stars themselves, nurseries spread across the galaxy, where vast clouds of gas and dust linger for millennia, silent cradles poised to collapse. These regions are nebulae, stretches of interstellar medium, thick enough with hydrogen and heavier elements to shimmer under telescopic view. Clouds tens of light years wide, some glowing with emission as newborn stars within flood them with ultraviolet light, others dark and cold, absorbing starlight as umbral silhouettes. Within these cold wombs, gravity begins its persistence, gathering atoms minutely toward denser knots, pulling entire parsecs of gas toward centers, until eventually pressure grows unbearable, and when density and temperature cross threshold, nuclear fusion ignites, and a star is born. Imagine that moment. A fragment of cloud condenses, hydrogen atoms compressed until their very nuclei fuse, and the release of energy halts, collapse by pushing outward with radiation pressure. An equilibrium reached between gravity and fusion, and in that balance a sun emerges. It is a process repeated billions of times across the Milky Way. Each star around you once gestated in such a nebula. Each photon we see born from that long initiation of collapse, fire, stabilization. Among the most famous nurseries that humankind has glimpsed is the Orion Nebula, a glowing pocket of hydrogen hanging just beneath Orion's belt, visible even to naked eyes as a faint misty patch, but through telescope, revealed as a sprawling cloud lit bright by young stars coalescing within its heart. This nebula lies about 1,344 light-years away, but its influence upon the imagination is immediate, for to place your eyes upon it is to watch live creation, photons streaming directly from cradled suns only hundreds of thousands of years old, cosmic infants shouting light into the void. No culture invented myth here. The nebula is itself myth, a theater of creation, visible directly. Another is the Eagle Nebula, within which the Hubble Space Telescope captured what humanity now calls the pillars of creation, towering columns of dust and gas reaching light years long, formations dissolving slowly under ultraviolet assault of nearby hot young stars, yet still protective, still birthing clusters of suns within hidden chambers. To look at such images is to see sculpting on impossible scales, matter drawing itself together under its own weight, slowly condensing until luminous ignition bursts from cores. And just as stars are not identical, their destinies diverge depending on their mass. A star like our sun will quietly fuse hydrogen for billions of years, expanding eventually to a red giant, shedding outer layers into a planetary nebula before the core settles to become a white dwarf, a dense ember cooling over trillions of years. Stars much more massive than the sun die faster, in only millions of years, burning at ferocious rates, swelling titans that in their last moments collapse and explode as supernova, dispersing heavy elements, carbon, oxygen, iron, into cosmos, seeding clouds that in turn collapse into new stars, new planets, new bodies of life. The most massive collapse to black holes, warping space itself. Low-mass stars smaller than the sun burn slowly and steadily for trillions of years, so long no one will ever see them die in the current universe's age. The range of lives is as diverse as the range of creatures on Earth, each destiny already written by initial mass when condensation begins, each star's story imprinted in the very weight of the gas collected at birth. From cradle to destiny. This is the cycle. Nebula concentrates, fusion ignites, light fills darkness, mass determines path, collapse repeats. To lean back and imagine yourself within this is to be aware not only of beauty, but of participation. Every atom forming your body, carbon in your cells, oxygen in your breath, iron in your blood, was once fused in a stellar heart, dispersed in a stellar death, recycled across cycles of nebula and ignition, until eventually condensed into a planet near a stable star and arranged into life forms. Each heartbeat is an echo of that cosmic collapse and ignition. When you peer at Orion Nebula, faint in winter nights, or gaze at Hubble's towering columns, you are peering at your own prehistory. Life is not separate from nebula. It is nebula folded and refined into complex form. Every glance at young stars is a glance at your own ancestors in elemental form, their lives and deaths sculpting the chemistry of your existence. To see this with meditative heart is to know the galaxy is not static, but eternally generative. Stars bloom where gases still accumulate. Nebulae carve themselves into shapes of dragons, pillars, wings, not for symbolism, but by differential radiation. Yet symbols arise in your consciousness unbidden, myths written across luminous beds of gas, because imagination responds naturally to scale, color, chaos, symmetry. The astronomy reminds you of physics, yet the poetry remains yours to supply. And in this blending, science filling the mind with knowledge, imagination filling the heart with meaning, you dwell in a universe that is at once mechanical and miraculous, a clockwork of forces and a cathedral of births. When you next look at a clear night, think of the planets moving as dancers across an elliptical stage composed by gravity, and then draw your mind further out and imagine clouds collapsing into fire, whole populations of stars igniting across millions of years, galactic nurseries blazing like gardens eternal. Planets and nebulae are parts of the same composition, one the choreography of completed worlds moving predictably, the other the generative fountain from which worlds arise. Picture a star at the height of its power, a sun-like blaze that, for billions of years, balances inward gravity against outward fusion, core pressure against radiant release, each second consuming hundreds of millions of tons of hydrogen, and yet holding perfectly stable. And imagine now the eventual moment when the fuel is running thin, when the hydrogen at the core dwindles and balance falters, gravity gaining the upper hand, compressing the core inward until temperatures spike so high that new layers above begin to fuse, helium transforming into carbon, carbon into oxygen, heavier and heavier elements igniting in shells, and as this deep furnace changes its composition, the star as a whole swells outward in response, its envelope expanding dozens or even hundreds of times, its surface temperature cooling though its size and luminosity magnify, and what was once a steady star on the main sequence swells into a red giant, bloated, trembling, a sphere so immense that, if our own sun followed this inevitable path, its swollen edges would engulf Mercury and Venus, and perhaps even Earth itself. In that unimaginable future skies would not hold a small glowing disk, but a sphere so wide it commands half the sky, crimson and huge, yet paradoxically cooler, its surface more orange and red than white, but its brilliance so overwhelming no creature could survive its heat. Life as we know it will vanish long before. Oceans evaporated, atmosphere thinned away, but still the sun will continue, pushing into this last phase with dignity, helium fusing into carbon and oxygen, until even that stage ends, and then begins the shedding of its outer layers into drifting shells. These shells illuminated from within form delicate figures called planetary nebulae, though they bear no true planets, instead sculpted clouds shaped by stellar winds and radiation, glowing rings, ovals, butterfly wings etched across space, expanding gas shining in green, turquoise, crimson, when ionized by ultraviolet light of the fading core. Each planetary nebula is a monument to death, and yet also to beauty, a chrysanthemum cut flower placed gently into silence, glimmering for tens of thousands of years before fading into invisible spread, dispersing enriched matter into the galaxy. To you it appears as a smoke ring around a central star, but in truth it is half a sun's envelope cast outward, recycled into interstellar medium that will one day collapse again into new forms of life. What remains of such a star, after it has emptied its shells, is a core of carbon and oxygen, compressed beyond anything near Earth, so compact that matter no longer behaves as familiar matter, but is maintained against collapse by quantum effects, the pressure of electrons themselves raining outward against gravity, leaving a white dwarf, a sphere no larger than Earth, but with the mass nearly of the Sun, unimaginably dense, glowing faintly as residually trapped heat leaks away over trillions of years. Imagine a star's life, ending not with explosion, but with this quiet ember, fading endlessly, but never collapsing further, a story written in slowness and patience. This is the destiny of our sun. Stars more massive follow different paths. Those 8 or 10 times the sun's mass burn faster, live hotter, and end more violently. As their cores run out of lighter fuel, they push into complex webs of fusion, producing neon, magnesium, silicon, until eventually iron accumulates, a dead-end material that cannot release energy by further fusion. And once iron fills the core, gravity wins catastrophically, core imploding in fractions of a second, energies so vast that the outer layers rebound into supernova explosion, blowing atmospheres apart, shining with a brilliance that outshines entire galaxies for weeks or months. In that burst, the heavy elements are forged: gold, uranium, iodine, copper, every metal more massive than iron born in those instants of collapse, scattered into surrounding space. To see a supernova in night skies, as Chinese astronomers saw one near Taurus in 1054, leaving the pulsar and nebula now called the Crab, is to witness creation in the act of destruction, a cataclysm writing future chemistry. Harden that idea inside your chest. The iron atoms in your blood, allowing hemoglobin to carry oxygen, were once manufactured in the heart of an exploding star, ejected outward, drifting silently through darkness, until captured by the cloud that condensed into Earth, your veins literally carrying cosmic detritus of old destruction. Depending on mass, that collapsed core may settle as a neutron star, a blisteringly dense sphere, only tens of kilometers across, but containing the mass of multiple suns, its protons and electrons crushed into neutrons, until matter is no longer matter, but nuclear paste, such objects spinning rapidly, beaming out pulses of radio light, as lighthouses of the cosmos. Others, more massive still, cannot resist gravity's hunger and collapse further into a black hole, invisible, compressed into density beyond measure. But remember, at the genesis of each of these, matter is scattered outward as well, matter that seeds the next generation of suns, the next generation of planets, the next opportunity for life to rise. So the death of stars is never truly death. It is passage. The recycling of atoms ensures that the end of one star is the beginning for countless new forms. Nebulae glowing across the spiral arms of galaxies are built on the ashes of elder generations. Children in future species will breathe air thick with oxygen that once lay fused in a red giant's trembling husk. Civilizations will build tools of iron scattered from blasts so fierce our words cannot contain them. And every line of poetry you write, every memory you record, every kiss on tender lips is made possible by calcium born in shells, magnesium burned into bone, phosphorus struck into DNA, all drawn from ashes of older suns. You live inside a cycle of collapse and rebirth, your blood luminous with the heritage of ancient explosions, your existence the testament that stellar death is a gift. Now press your mind upon the name that terrifies and fascinates. Black hole, a phrase whispered as though it marked the maw of cosmic hunger. Yet what it truly represents is not a monster crouched in space, consuming endlessly, but a natural consequence of gravity carried to its most extreme. When mass collapses beyond the limits of white dwarfs and neutron stars, density increases until escape velocity, the speed required to fly free from gravity's embrace, exceeds the speed of light itself, meaning not even photons, those swiftest messengers of the cosmos, can escape its pull, and thus a black hole is born, not as a tangible sphere or devouring throat, but as a region, a curvature, a distortion of time, space itself. Around it there exists, not a wall but a threshold, called the event horizon, the distance from the center, at which all possible future paths turn inward. It is not a surface you could touch. It is a boundary drawn by geometry. To cross it is to remove forever the ability to return. Imagine it gently, not with fear. Matter falling inward does not simply vanish, but gathers into a disk beforehand, called an accretion disk, rotating at incredible speed, gas streaming faster than any furnace, friction and magnetic fields heating it to millions of degrees, so that even as the black hole itself reveals nothing, the space around it blazes brighter than galaxies. X-rays, gamma rays pouring across light years, quasars in the distant universe, among the brightest objects we can see, are powered by black holes feeding in this way, not destroying but illuminating, not absence but paradoxical presence, radiating more than their host galaxies, because of how tightly gravity squeezes energy from falling matter. See the image captured by telescopes in 2019 of the supermassive black hole in galaxy M87, a circular shadow ringed with streaming orange light. What you are seeing is the glowing disk, matter screaming as it spirals inward, while the horizon itself is represented by absence at the center, wider than all our solar system laid together. At the center of our own galaxy lies such an object, Sagittarius as asterisk, a supermassive black hole, 4 million times the mass of the Sun, hidden by clouds of dust, yet revealed through the orbits of nearby stars, whipping in ellipses at tremendous speeds. They dance like moths near a flame, their paths described precisely by a dark mass, invisible yet undeniable, confirming what Einstein's equations dared to propose, that space itself could be bent into wells so deep, nothing resists. Yet despite its enormity, we orbit safely far outside, 2/3 toward the galactic edge, unaffected. This central black hole is not a devourer rampaging outward. It is a keystone around which the galaxy cohesively swirls, a stabilizing weight turning spiral into organized form. Do not think of black holes as hissing mouths, but as silent records carved into the fabric of reality. They tell stories of stars too massive, of galaxies fusing, of cosmic evolution, and they showcase light at its brightest as matter falls close. Even time itself behaves oddly. Approach a black hole and time slows relative to distant observers, so that travelers plunging too close would seem frozen to others, caught at the brink of horizon endlessly, though in their own frame they fall to an inevitable center called singularity, a concept where conventional physics breaks. Paradox and inevitability blend here, yet neither should breed fear. Rather than void, think cradle again. Black holes recycle too. They shape galaxies with their jets, regulate star formation by casting winds back across spiral arms, influence environments far broader than their event horizon. They are sculptors, not simply destroyers. Their very invisibility hides nurturing roles. Every bright core of galaxy owes its brilliance to interaction with a central whole. Earth itself orbits peacefully within a galaxy shaped by such titanic presence. Without them, galaxies would be chaotic. Without coherence, with them they hold rhythm. So the term black hole is misleading. It should perhaps be thought of as the dark heart of galaxies, pulsing silently, but anchoring the shape of all else. When you close your eyes and drift in imagination near one, do not imagine yourself being torn. Imagine instead the luminous spirals of gas, the shimmering arcs bending as light curves around geometry, the slow ballet of stars tethered invisibly, the patient anchor of galaxies. It is not horror that greets you, but awe, not consumption, but transformation. Space is not full of predators. It is full of balance, necessary extremes. These objects, trusted by equations, are not destroyers, but curators, guardians of galactic harmony. Around each, spines of jets often appear, narrow beams of plasma near light speed, launching perpendicular to the accretion disk, extending millions of light years to shape intergalactic medium. Enormous lighthouses seeding far corners with energy. Imagine them blazing, not annihilating, but fertilizing cosmic soil. Imagine their role by regulating, by pouring energy back, by limiting unchecked growth. They act like immune systems for galaxies. And within these narratives, you begin to feel differently. The word black is only description, not intent. The term whole describes geometry, not absence of meaning. What they really are, mathematic inevitabilities, cosmic anchors wrapped in brilliance, paradoxes made visible. To rest inside that image is to be freed from fear, for you cannot be devoured by metaphor. You can only be enlightened. So, listen. Stars have their lives and their deaths. They expand as giants, blow as supernovae, shrink into dwarfs, neutron stars, black holes, each path scattering elements, each journey recirculating matter. And their extremes, the black holes, operate not as ends of story, but as pivots in larger tales, luminous where they gather, structuring where they lurk. This is the final kindness the cosmos gives to nightmares. showing you that even terror has beauty, even extremity serves balance. And as you breathe against the quiet of your room tonight, you can feel that balance echoing, cycles and anchors, death and rebirth, silence and radiance, all of them stitched into the abyss. Breathe in slowly now, and imagine that every rise of your chest corresponds to the rise of galaxies away from one another. That every gentle exhalation echoes the expansion of the universe itself. For what astronomers discovered in the 20th century is that the cosmos is not static, not frozen as once believed, but stretching, space itself unfolding, like fabric pulled by invisible hands in all directions at once. And this expansion is not limited to galaxies straying through pre-existing emptiness. It is the emptiness itself lengthening, the coordinates themselves moving apart, so that even if galaxies appear still relative to their local neighbors, the underlying framework is swelling, and over eons, this expansion creates ever wider gulfs of darkness. The measurement of this inexhaustible rhythm was founded upon the faint signature, tucked into starlight, called redshift, a subtle stretching of wavelengths. For when an ambulance drives away from you, its siren lowers in pitch, sound waves stretched by mutual motion, and in identical manner, beams of light arriving at our telescopes reveal that wavelengths are shifted to longer, redder tones, testimony that galaxies themselves are receding, space carrying them away like paper boats on a flood. Each degree of redshift is a measure of distance, a cosmic yardstick inscribed not in kilometers, but in time itself. For the farther the galaxy, the more pronounced the shift, a near universal proof that the cosmos is still expanding from some hot, dense origin. The age of the universe, derived from these expansions and from echoing proof in the glow of the cosmic microwave background, is roughly 13.8 billion years. An age so vast that even when spoken aloud, it feels symbolic more than numeric. Yet remember that when you inhale tonight, breathing in rhythm with distant stars, that number is real. It is the time since space itself was set free to grow, since matter began coalescing into forms that eventually would become oceans, forests, breath, you. For billions of years, galaxies have drifted as time's partners, distances growing, bound clusters resisting expansion locally, but carried onward nonetheless, like dancers holding hands while the floor beneath them moves apart. Space is not passive. It does not stand as background. It is participant, a restless character performing alongside matter, dictating geometry, stretching light, writing history through its changes. The galaxies are not sailing across fixed nothingness. They are written into the threads of the expanding stage, and as this stage enlarges, the notes of the universe's song lengthen too, just as respiration lengthens when you calm, just as each drawn breath here in the quiet of night parallels dilation of space. Visualize an early universe compact beyond comprehension, 400,000 years old, dense with plasma and radiation, glowing uniform, and compare it to the infinite web we witness now, sprawling across 93 billion light-years of observable extent. Each cycle of your lungs echoes this growth. Inhalation is the quantum fireball swelling. Exhalation, the smoothness of galaxies finding positions. And beyond breathing lies the implication that when you rest in bed with chest rising slowly, you practice in miniature the universe's largest truth. Expansion continues second by second. Though the scales dwarf perception, nothing remains fixed. Stars orbit centers of galaxies. Galaxies slide through filaments of dark matter. But underlying all is a relentless outpouring. Distances incrementally stretching, even between atoms when measured abstractly, though bonds of force hold them together. You are not standing inside a static cathedral. You live inside an inflating one, its walls sliding apart gradually as you gently lower your head to sleep. This growth imprints light with time, giving us the possibility of measurement. And through it, scientists discovered dark energy, the mysterious driver that causes expansion not merely to continue, but to accelerate, an invisible pressure pushing as though space preferred stretching, like breath that refuses cessation. And so when you count time, not by minutes, but by cosmic pulses, you realize that everything visible, from Orion's belt to the arc of the Milky Way, is drawn upon a tapestry that is still weaving larger patterns, even as you close your eyes. Feel again your inhale. Picture galaxies receding incrementally, your blood cells stretching with oxygen intake, the Earth herself twirling through a void that is not truly void, but elastic, unfixed, constantly in motion. Each sigh of yours is an entire cosmos expanding, slow but relentless, forever pulling every edge farther away. And so the world is built of rhythm, footsteps repeating across Earth's crust, tides recurring in lunar cycles, lungs swelling and releasing. And beyond all, the universe, vast solidarity with your breathing, the macrocosm, hidden inside every inhale and exhale. To drift into sleep while contemplating this correspondence is to place yourself inside resonance, to lie not separate, but synchronous with infinity. One breath, an echo of space growing, one silence a match for the silence between galaxies. Light is the second rhythm, and light is the great courier of truth, yet its swift velocity also carries limitation. For no matter how fast it flies, it is finite, 300,000 kilometers per second, enough to circle Earth 7 times in the blink of an eye, but still bound, still measuring distance, hand in hand with duration. Every time you raise your gaze towards stars, you are not meeting them in their current state, but in their history, because the glow that strikes your retina departed long ago, photons leaving their surfaces across spans of time, so immense they transform looking to time travel. The luminous shaft of the constellation Orion is a clear example. Betelgeuse shines red and massive about 700 light-years away, and Rigel blue and fierce about 860 light-years. So their beams left when medieval monasteries still copied manuscripts, when human languages were shaping into their modern forms. So what you see tonight is not now, but then, preserved across centuries by uncompromising flight. Many stars visible without telescope are even closer, their light only years old, but countless others reveal themselves by telescopic glass, as faint whispers that left before pyramids were raised, before rivers carved valleys, before our species fully woke into consciousness. The difference between stars and galaxies underscores the immensity. Light from Andromeda, our nearest spiral neighbor, takes over 2 million years to cross the intergalactic bridge. So when you catch faint smudges of its glow in a very dark sky, you are perceiving a message launched, while early ancestors on Earth learned to walk upright when fire was a possibility, but not yet a certainty. Peer deeper through space, and you gaze farther back. Galaxies, seen by Hubble Space Telescope's deepest fields, appear as they were billions of years ago. Mere babies in cosmic terms, light stretched redder and fainter, by expansion yet still reaching us with testimony intact. To watch those images is to time travel to epochs when the first stars ignited, when the earliest galaxies assembled, when the cosmos itself was a teenager. Each photon, traveling across unimaginable distances, is a messenger that refuses to waver, carrying intact information about the conditions from which it came, carrying story of its original star or cluster or flare. and arriving silently into instruments we build, into eyes we open, into dreams we shape. In every direction, the night sky is filled, not with the present, but with multiple pasts. Look at Sirius, brightest star of the night, and you are seeing it as it was 8 years ago. Look at Proxima Centauri, our closest stellar neighbor, and you see 4.2 years into its history. Look at Deneb in Cygnus, and you traverse more than 2,500 years backward, watching photons that embarked when ancient philosophers debated metaphysics and empire rose and fell. And all these different times are visible simultaneously, woven into one sky above you, so that the dome is not a current map, but a mosaic of whens, not just wheres. Every glance upward is layered, a palimpsest of journeys, a quilt of memory given by light. Galaxies beyond the Milky Way deepen this paradox. Each smear is a congregation of billions of stars, and yet every smear is already ancient, their light departing millions to billions of years ago. To stare at those delicate mist forms through a telescope is to become a traveler backward across histories greater than geologic time, to witness glimpses of fossil light, like holding seashells pressed into rock, but on scales unimaginable. The further you look, the older you see, until at boundaries of detection telescopes reveal galaxies as they were only a few 100 million years after the universe began, photons that traveled almost the full length of cosmic age, week-old sparks preserved until now. The sky is therefore a time machine permanent above every horizon. It does not require engines or metals, only eyes, a little darkness, and imagination. Consider then when you trace constellations tonight, the Taurus bull overhead, the arc of Cassiopeia, the Scorpion's curve in southern reach. Each star has already changed across hundreds or thousands of years. Some might have dimmed, some might even have ended, casting outward debris of supernovae, while you still receive their earlier shine. The dome above is not real time. Broadcast, it is a record delayed yet faithful. Time floods you disguised as light. Each night you collect fragments that began their journey long before you. Think of light from galaxies crossing 2 million years, long enough that entire species on Earth arose and vanished between emission and reception. You are always already looking backward. And when you realize this, when you hold with gentleness the weight of all those journeys, you discover that vision itself is a bridge across chasms of time. That awareness makes you witness to epochs of history otherwise unimaginable. No matter how tired, when you glance up, you touch multiplicities of them. And in those multiplicities, you hear the universe whisper that you are not limited to the span of your birth and death. You are a participant in a continuum that stretches across billions of years. And by simple act of looking, you become traveler, floating not in space only, but through time itself. Open your lungs once more. Feel again the rhythm. Imagine expansion mirrored in breath, and as you exhale, let your mind drift across photons, from the nearby shine of Sirius to the ancient flicker of galaxies, finishing their travel across almost 14 billion years. And in that drifting, recognize yourself, not simply in place, but in time, not simply alive in a year of a calendar, but alive inside a continuum of memory written in light. The night sky is a portal, a script, a silent chronicle of the cosmos's unfolding past, and in each gaze you are not spectator, but voyager, carried along not by machines, but by light itself. Everywhere you look, if you give yourself enough patience to notice, you will see that the heavens above and the life within your body are telling the same story, that the line dividing star from self is softer than you ever imagined, because both are made of the same ingredients and bound by the same physics. And though you feel small beneath the dark, you are never separate. Matter is ancient indestructible by ordinary means, transformed again and again, but never truly lost. And so the atoms that you use to breathe, the ones aligned now in spirals of DNA, in calcium bones, in sodium currents across nerves, were long ago bright fragments of cosmic fire, built in furnaces of stars that lived and died before the Earth had even formed. Take iron, for instance, tucked invisibly inside the hemoglobin of your blood, carrying the oxygen that lets you remain alive for even this moment. Each of those atoms is testimony of a supernova, for iron is the ash produced when a cataclysmic star collapses and expends itself in one overwhelming outburst, scattering to the interstellar medium that eventually seeded your planetary cradle. The carbon that defines the structures of every living cell around you was created by helium fusion within ancient red giants, stars bloated and heavy that exhaled their outer husks once their lives concluded. Oxygen originated in similar ways. Helium fused to carbon fused to oxygen, a ladder of elements stitched together under densities thousands of times stronger than anything Earth has felt. Magnesium, sodium, lithium, silicon, it is all star stuff. Your skin, your bones, your thoughts condensed from leftovers of detonation. Even the hydrogen running through your most basic chemical reactions, that ancient element born nearly 14 billion years ago in the early sweeps after the Big Bang, remains untouched, unbroken. The same fundamental building block, placing a portion of your body older than any star that glimmers overhead. When you reflect upon this, it becomes strangely intimate, because the distant galaxies that, to your eyes, are smears, and faint clouds are in fact cousins, different only in arrangement, each composed of stars whose debris resembles your own body's inventory. The periodic table that scientists hang upon classroom walls is not just a catalog of isolated substances. It is the genealogy of matter, the ancestral line that binds your pulse with the pulse of nebulae, a family tree stretching across billions of years. There is nothing within you that is alien to the cosmos, no chemistry separate from the heavens, no substance unaccounted for by stars. You are them, they are you. To divide the two is to forget that boundaries are conveniences of thought, not realities. Think of the path of a single atom, maybe of iron again, because it sits heavy and common within the blood you circulate now. Picture its journey, first created at the collapse of a massive star, far older than the sun, spewed outward as part of a shockwave, traveling for millions of years through interstellar darkness, lodging into a passing molecular cloud that drifted near a spiral arm of the Milky Way. Gravity then pulls dust and gas together, shaping solar nebula, and among billions of fragments, that atom is captured by the forming disk that will become our solar system. It condenses into rock, coils into mineral, trapped within crust of an infanting Earth. Billions of years later, forces shift. Water and chemistry play their long, patient games, and eventually, through sequences of improbable but real collisions, it becomes part of a living cell, not inert, but engaged, carried generation after generation until now, pumping along your blood as you recline and listen and breathe. All that journey occurred so this moment might hold you, so that you might feel tired and peaceful and safe enough to rest under a dark canopy. To understand this is not to belittle yourself, but to give yourself a scale of belonging larger than any nation, any name, any particular identity. You are a citizen of matter itself. Threads of your being are written into cycles so grand they stretch past imagination, yet so personal they fill your chest with air. This very minute, the stars you watch overhead are reminders of the persistence of these cycles, each shining a little differently, each destined to one day return their substance to the cosmic reservoir, and that reservoir will again sculpt planets, oceans, may be creatures with voices and eyes and longings of their own. You are therefore part of this infinite recursion. Your body has been 1,000 different things before it was ever you. Stone, dust, fire, gas, perhaps part of other lives long forgotten, and one day it will again return, scattered to continue. This realization softens fear. Death becomes less an annihilation than a continuation of transformation. You become soil, or gas, or plasma, and eventually stars will recycle you, fold you into art of formation, light you as torches across night skies in some future age. The child who looks upward at a star somewhere in the distant future may indeed be gazing at light made partially of you, your substance resurrected in another furnace, your atoms living second lives beyond what the word memory can contain. All that you endure is therefore never torn away. It is heritage, passed forward not in narrative, but in matter, not in sound, but in substance, not in legend, but in chemistry. When you take calm breaths, remember this: your lungs are filled with atmosphere, composed by Earth's volcanic outgassing, by plant respiration accumulated over epochs, and deeper still by elements minted in stars. Your every act of inhalation is communion with the cosmos. Your respiration is participation in the cycle that binds galaxies to humans. Pause for a moment and measure again. Inhale slowly. Imagine galaxies drifting apart with cosmic expansion. Exhale. Envision stellar debris folding into gravity's embrace, repeating, constant. With each repetition you merge with cosmic rhythm, body and universe in resonance, biology and astrophysics singing together in silence. Now picture yourself adrift in space. No ground beneath, only blackness. Yet that blackness glows faintly with scattered stars, billions of suns wrapped into arms of the Milky Way, as though all existence were a great river washing across eternity. You float among them effortlessly, and while floating you sense the threads of yourself reaching across to meet them, light from their faces crossing to your eyes, atoms from their deaths circulating through your veins. It becomes impossible to distinguish where they end and where you begin. Boundaries blur, identities converge. You too are part of the river. And this way, the statement that you are made of stardust is not metaphor but description. The very dust floating in the beam of a lamp in your bedroom contains atoms of carbon, silica, calcium, identical in origin to those scattered across nebulae. Difference is only concentration and arrangement. To dust you will return, not as punishment or loss, but as full and natural reunion. That is why poets can look at constellations and see kinship, why astronomers measure spectra and feel intimacy, why wanderers walk into quiet valleys at night and cry with awe toward unbroken heavens. The intimacy is undeniable. It is physical truth. You might feel small when compared to billions of galaxies, and in one sense you are, just as a droplet is small compared to an ocean. But in another sense, which is truer and deeper, the droplet is also the ocean. For the entire ocean consists of droplets. The galaxy is made of stars. The stars made of atoms. Your body is atoms. Your mind and feelings are patterns of atoms. So where does the separation lie? The immensity does not diminish you. It contains you, and because it contains you, it is you. Small is simply another word for specific, not lesser. Indeed, there is no cosmos without you observing it right now, translating photons and atoms into the experience of beauty. The stars above can shine without witness, but only with your eyes open do they become constellations. Only within your consciousness does the sky become story. Only within your being do the lifeless motions of fusion and gravitation become alive. You are participant, not spectator. And as fatigue now settles upon you, as eyelids grow heavy, recognize that nothing fragile about you is lost. The quiet safety of your room is an extension of cosmic process, walls built of stone and timber, formed by transformations of matter across epochs, beds stuffed with fibers from plants, grown by photosynthesis, pillow filled by threads of molecular architecture, woven from sunlight billions of times removed from stellar fusion. Even in domestic silence, you are placed inside a cathedral of infinite nights. There is no separation. There is only continuity from nebula to star, from supernova to planet, from dust to DNA, from perception to rest. Let yourself reach that rest. Now, inhale one final deep breath, sensing galaxies drifting imperceptibly farther apart. Hold gently, exhale, releasing weight, feeling yourself drift farther outward until you are weightless, part of the same sea as every particle, a voyager becoming still. Stars arch gently above, not cold but tender, not distant but familial. Hear within silence the echo of their fires, not loud but soothing, like distant heartbeat joining your own. All that you are has roots in them, and all that they are has expression in you. You are safe in this truth. You are endless in this continuity. You are tonight, stardust dreaming of itself. So close your eyes now, and let yourself drift slowly into that river of stillness. The Milky Way spreading above like a luminous blanket pulled across infinity. Galaxies resting as lanterns. The universe whispering not in noise, but in presence. Let the rhythm of your breath synchronize with the rhythm of expansion. Inhale and sense the birth of new beginnings. Exhale and let go into night. Sleep arrives quickly when you soften against this immense belonging. Stars continue their work. Galaxies dance. The cosmos hums its long song. And you need do nothing, for you are included. You are held. You are already at home beneath them. Drift deeply, without effort. Rest peacefully. Dream in light.